so excited to welcome you, obviously, to day 8. I'm that excited that I don't even have notes of what the footage is because I just thought I would wing it this morning. But I know that we're on day 8, and I'm guessing we're on the second leg of day 8. But because we have Pete and Claire, they're going to talk to us about that. So I don't have to worry about that today. What I wanted to do was share a couple of quick stats with you, and then I will pass over to the team. So we've had over 240 people participate in this ride from all over the globe, which is incredible. Out of that, half of them are first-time riders with Hands, which is amazing. And we're so happy to welcome you to the Hands family. You'll never be able to leave now. You're stuck with us. We have had over 1,000 views in Zoom. So all these Zoom sessions, we've had over 1,000 people watch them, which is amazing. And we've done, would you believe, 52 hours of Zoom. That's a lot of hours, can I just point out? And it's been amazing. Included in that is 34 interviews. And if you've been on those interviews, you'll know how amazing they are, the talent that we got and the effort that we put in. So distance traveled is over 92,000 kilometers, which is massive and a number that I can't even comprehend on the bike. All I know is that I've nearly done my 800, but that is amazing. And together we have raised almost, or so close, $250,000. So I hope those numbers aren't lost on you this morning, because it has been a huge effort from, can I say, a very small, incredible Hands team to pull this together, and in such a short period of time as well. To think that 2.5 months ago, our fundraising calendar was pretty much wiped for 2020. And we had to put our very smart collective heads together to come up with something. And I'm so proud to have been a part of this project. And not just because I had to get on the bike and ride 800K. I think they may have created it just so that I finally did a bike ride. But for all those people out there that haven't done one before, have joined us for the first time, and all of our loyal supporters, I just wanted to say from myself and from Hands, a massive thank you for being part of this journey. The impact that you have had on the kids in Thailand is keeping everything going. That's the best way I can describe it. Keeping their a safe roof over their heads, 3 meals a day, love, care, schooling, all those things is because you got on the bike every day in the month of June. So from us, thank you so much. But I am going to hand over to 3 very capable people. So Bridget has a long history with Hands, and she's going to be speaking to and interviewing Pete and Claire today. So we'll learn a little bit more about that. But basically, there wouldn't have been a virtual ride. There wouldn't have been any rides if it wasn't for Bridget. So we can't think of someone more to talk to us on this last day. Because I've got a 1-year-old, I'm not going to jump back on at the end. So I'm quickly going to let you know that there's 2 more sessions today. There's one at 12 o'clock where we're going to be doing the final leg of the ride, and the special 6 p.m. drinks. So please, either of those sessions, come and join us. The drinks is actually going to be on video. So we will be able to see you. Sorry, your camera will be working. That's what I mean. So we'll be able to see you, have a virtual drink with you, and we've got some special stuff planned. But for now, I'm going to hand over to the team. So again, thank you all so much, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Sam. Really appreciate that intro. And good morning, everybody. Welcome to our last day of riding. Yay. I'd like to pretend I was on the bike like Pete did when he was doing his interviews. Yeah, but I'm not. I'm done. And I just want to add my congratulations to Emma's. It's huge what we have collectively achieved. And welcome Pete and Claire. We've saved our very special guests best to last. Give us one word, Pete and Claire, one word each to describe how you feel at the end of the ride.
Grateful.
Now, Bridge, you've started with a mistake thinking I've got one word. So what I will say, Bridge, is I just wanted to give a shout out to Mickey Campbell. Mickey's recovered from yesterday and he's on the call this morning. And for those that might not have heard the shout out we gave him yesterday, Saturday morning, Mickey started riding at 6 a.m. along the M7 and finished at 12:30 on Monday morning and did the whole 800 kilometres with an amazing support team. But I think that's just an incredible effort. So thanks to Mickey, and that's how this interview will roll. Bridge,
you had one word.
I will be as compliant as ever.
Excellent.
Well
I
done.
expect nothing less. If you think that was a mistake, that was just a test. So let's get into it. Look, I'm sure some of you may have breezed through this 800 kilometres, but I know for many of us it was a hard slog. You know, getting enthused, rolling out of bed at 6 a.m. and getting straight onto the bike or going out on those cold weekends. And of course, we all did it for the beautiful kids in the communities that we support in Thailand. And we do need to sit back today and celebrate and just congratulate ourselves a little bit. And just know that every one of you is on this ride this morning, has been doing this throughout the month, has made this world a better place for others. Now, over the last 4 weeks, we have heard from an array of amazing guests, from uni cyclists to ultra marathon runners, filmmakers, adventurers, athletes, cyclists, to those who've rowed across the Atlantic or the Tasman Sea, or trekked the Arctic, the South Pole, or even got married at first sight. From incredible Paralympians in multiple sporting fields to a man who trekked the Kokoda with no legs. And I've been in the corporate world of leadership for a long time, and I have never seen such an amazing lineup of speakers in one go. And as Emma said, we had over 34 interviews. So I wanted to first of all congratulate you, Pete and Claire, and the team at Hands for putting such an amazing event together in such short notice. Thanks to the board members, Kay Spencer, Willie Moldham, Scott Stein, all riding with us today over in New Zealand, Andrew and Sue Blair, and to our interviewers who did an incredible job while riding, Pete, Tomo, Scotty, and Alison. And as we heard from all of these guests and these incredible people, it did occur to me that we haven't really heard from the people who make it all happen for Hands, which of course, Pete and Claire Baines. And Pete's updated us on various occasions about the projects that are going on in Thailand. And we've had the privilege to cross to the homes for a number of live feeds. And Claire's led us through many of the sessions. But today I want to take a slightly different tack, and we'll see how much Pete obeys, and just talk about their personal stories so that we get to know them a little bit better and to truly understand the incredible work that they do and the difference that they make. And as Emma mentioned, and I didn't realise this statistic until she mentioned it earlier, over half of our riders are new to the Hands family. So not everybody has heard of Hands before or been involved before. Many of you will have heard Pete speak at conferences, but some of you may not really know anything about Pete and Claire. So bear with me, I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction. And we'll start with Pete. So Pete has a rather unique path. From investigating homicides in the police force and leading teams into scenes of crisis and disaster, to becoming a global keynote speaker and a business consultant, which provides insights into leadership that are very different and yet really relevant to all of us as we face into change and growth and challenges of our own. Pete worked in a number of countries following major disasters. So from the Bali bombings to the Japanese earthquake and tsunami, to work in Saudi Arabia, and of course, Thailand. And as a forensic investigator, he spent time with Interpol and the UN Office of Drug and Crime, where he advised on counter-terrorism. But it was his work in Thailand following the 2004 Boxing Day tsunami that really set Pete on the path of changing lives. And while in Thailand, he was leading the victims' identification forensics team, Pete came across 32 children living in a tent who had lost home and family and everything. And at that point, he decided that something must be done to help, and the rest is history. Now, Claire, the brains trust behind the partnership, his beautiful wife, is the general manager of the Hands Group. And Claire is a passionate and driven leader who just wants to help people be the best version of themselves. Claire spent the first part of her career navigating sort of the corporate events space before she launched her own business. And her business was aimed at helping corporates connect with charities, which is such a worthwhile and unique space to be in. So it was a natural path for Claire to focus 100% of her time on Hands, given her deep engagement through the work that she was doing with Pete. And in February 2019, Claire was appointed the General Manager of Hands Group to oversee the social enterprises that support the charity. Claire's completed over 19 rides herself, it's probably more than that, CT, and she's raised over $150,000 personally for Hands. She believes that all children deserve a choice in life. And while she claims to be the coolest auntie in the world after me, she just is one of the most loving and giving people you could ever have the pleasure of knowing. So we're going to kick off with you, Claire. Can you just tell us a little bit more about yourself and what drew you, your journey that drew you to this significant leadership role with Hands across the water?
Oh, goodness. So it all started with a presentation that I went to. as most people's journey with Hands starts as a keynote presentation from Mr. Baines over here. And back in 2006, I was working in the corporate sector, doing events, attending speaker showcases, checking out talent for our conferences, and I came across this guy and followed his journey. There was something about his story that I just felt there was something that just moved me. And it wasn't until 2010 that I saw him again at another conference, and I was at a point in my life where I went, oh, I just feel a bit stuck and need something new and something fresh, and need to set myself a bit of a challenge. And this 800-kilometre bike ride came up. And I went home, sat down with mum and dad, and I said, what do you think? It's 800 kilometres, it's $10,000 I need to raise. And their response to me was, well, who is this Peter Baines guy, and what is this charity? And so Dad, with the real skeptical dad, was very cautious and a little bit wary about me signing up for this 800-kilometre bike ride. So it was something I'd never looked at done before. So it was a huge challenge, but a challenge that would eventually change my life.
And are your parents still very wary of Pete?
More so.
Now, of course, immediately you got on the bike ride, you thought, I'm going to marry this guy?
Not at all. He actually, I think we spoke maybe once on the bike ride, and again at the end of the bike ride, as I was a sobbing mess riding into PTN for that first time. I think most of us have been there. So yeah, no, absolutely not. It was probably about 18 months later that romance blossomed, and he finally took me on a date.
Oh, now Pete.
I let him
Sorry. Pete, clearly you're punching above your weight. But to another point, what sort of challenges does it bring you to be working so closely together? You know, if you have common purpose, does everything else just fall away and it's all roses? Or how do you separate your work and your personal lives, or do you?
Let you answer that.
I think the way that things work so well is when we met, we were both traveling a lot, and people have commented before, is it hard to have the relationship that we do with so much travel? And I said, no, we have the relationship we do because of so much travel. And it gives CT that break from me. But I think, COVID's demonstrated one thing, is that, this is the longest we've ever spent together since we've known each other. And we're still okay. We're still friends. We're still deciding to cohabitate. And So I think that, the challenges of working together can certainly, try a relationship. But I guess the biggest challenge, and this would be for anyone, no matter what they're doing, if they're working together with their partner, is the biggest problem is work never stops, is that it just dominates so much of your time and your conversations. And like if your partner works in a different field, we can quickly say, look, I actually don't give a shit about work. I'm sick of hearing about what's going on at your work. But for us, we do care about the same things related to work. So there's no off button, and that's something that we've actually had to try to really put in place, so that there's a time where our conversations aren't just about hands.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So Claire, you said you came in on your first ride and you were a sobbing mess. Tell us a little bit more about your first experiences in Thailand, what they meant to you, how they impacted your life, and what was it that made you sort of go back and dedicate your life to this cause?
Yeah, so riding into BTN on that last day, I guess in the lead up to the ride, Mum and Dad were still a little bit kind of, what's this all about? And at the end of October that year, so we were riding in the January, so at the end of October, we sat down for dinner and Mum and Dad announced that they were going to meet me at the end. And for me, that was just such a huge validation of what I was doing, and it gave me the confidence to keep pushing through. I hadn't quite raised the 10 at that point, but it just gave me that get up and go to cross that fundraising finish line, and then obviously get over to Thailand. And yeah, riding in on that last day, it's, you'll never replace that first experience when you ride in. And I love watching people experience the ride for the first time, because you do just get that, it's so overwhelming. But there was one little girl, her name was and a few months earlier I'd run an event, because being an events person, what else do you do for your fundraising? And I'd used a photo that I got from Hands, and I'd used a photo, and it was this beautiful little girl, and she was kind of my hero sort of throughout my fundraising campaign. And I rode into BTN, and guess who came up to me?
No.
It was that little girl, and it wasn't until I was on the bus back to the hotel and I was looking at the photos, and I just went, oh God, wow. Mm-hmm. And that for me was that little girl needs my help. And I get a bit choked up just talking about it. So for me, that was, she's the person that every time I go back there, she's there, she's growing up, she's beautiful. And those that are on my Facebook would have seen a photo that I posted the other day, and there's a painting of her hanging on our wall at home. So she's why we do what we do.
I was going to ask you what kept you going back, what kept you motivated right after ride after ride, and I think you probably answered that. But on a practical level, for those who are listening to you and might want to consider moving from the virtual ride to the ride in Thailand, when hopefully when we can travel again, what is that draw card for them, and how do you do that fundraising sort of year after year?
Look, the fundraising, it gets easier, I think, the deeper connection that you have, because it's easier to tell the story. And, that first year, you don't know what you're riding into. You don't know you do know what you're raising money for, but you haven't seen it. And I think once you've seen it, felt it, and had that experience, it becomes easier year on year. Not to say it's easy. I mean, $10,000, it's a challenge. And, lucky for me, I run events. So, that's the natural place for me to go to raise money. But I mean, we've seen people over the years do some incredible things to raise money. Yeah,
absolutely.
And do everything that we can to support people in that journey.
I know a lot of people have asked, Pete, why is it $10,000? Why is it so high? And, I'd love to just tell you there's this incredible science behind it. But when we were talking about the first ride, I sort of said to Peter, I think I can get 100 people to give me $100 to do this. So if you're all mad about the 10 grand, that's where it came from. Now, Pete, I know
You're
it's
welcome.
killing you. He's sitting there and he hasn't said a word for minutes. So I got to get on and talk to Pete. Pete, it's been 15 years since your final rotation into Thailand after the tsunami, where you and Jill Williams, your partner in crime, literally from the UK police, decided to do something to help the orphan children of the Khao Lak area in Thailand. So let's start right back there. Just describe that feeling of stepping off the bus once you had put Num Chai together and you saw it for the first time.
Probably that it was big, and something that I've learned is when you're building a project in Thailand, it always turns out to be so much bigger than you ever think. And, right to the learning centre that we're just about to open up at Ban Home Hug, you see the architectural drawings come through, and you've had all the discussions, and then you go up there and you see it and you think, hang on, I thought we just approved a one-story building. But so I guess for me it was big, and it looked like it would be certainly a happy place, and that's certainly what it is.
And way back then, did you really think that this would be your life, helping children and communities in Thailand?
Of course, Bridge, nothing happens by accident.
No, good mate. That's excellent. You had it all planned out.
Obviously, there was. It wasn't until we're in the minibus leaving after opening, been there for the opening of BTN, and I was talking to Jill, and we were talking about, well, what do we do next? And I think there was certainly a feeling within me that just building this home, that was all that needed to be done, and the job was over. And it was quite naive to think that, of course. And driving away that day, it was then I realised that, well, we really have only just begun, because now who provides the funding, who underwrites the medical care, the education, the food and all of that, and who's going to provide for the staff. And so it was driving away that I realised that this wouldn't be something that finished with the opening of the building.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember some of those early days, sort of 2006 or 7 and 8, when I first met you. And a lot of the time you were really doing it alone. You've had a few people like Scotty and that have come right through this journey with you. And then after that, of course, the wonderful Kay Spencer came on board with Nata. But it's not always easy, as well, you know better than any of us, to get people to commit, to stick with things for the longer term. People's circumstances change, their priorities change, life takes over, but you kept going. Why?
Yeah, and I think on that point of people sticking around, certainly one of the things I've learned through this 15-year journey is that people come to us for a season, a reason, or a lifetime. And that's okay. And this doesn't have to be anyone's commitment forever. And you've mentioned a few people there who have been there since the very early stages. And whether someone drops in for a ride or a virtual ride, and that's the limit of it, that's okay. There's no expectation, and there's no commitment made. I guess why I've stayed is in a real, a real deep feeling. I know it would be wrong of me to leave. I think that the structure that's been created within Hands, I could step away. I think if something happened and Hands wasn't there, I think they'd find a way to continue. It'd certainly be a very, very different time in the homes without Hands. But I know that if I stepped away, everything would be okay. The reason I stay, though, is apart from the change we can bring about, I feel it would be a selfish decision to leave, because there's an ability to bring people to spread the message at conferences and so forth, and not to do that would be wrong. So for now and for the foreseeable future, and hopefully for a lot longer, I'll certainly be here with hands.
Well, that's good news for us all. Look, I think I'd like to talk about this unique structure for hands, because in those early days, I remember you getting requests, not just from Thailand, but from all over the world, to help and to take this model into these other countries and help where there's so much need all over the place. And I remember the board coming to some of these decisions that was, look, where do we focus? Do we stay in Thailand? Where can we do the most good? And a concern that we had back then was, of course, that this was dependent completely on you, Pete, as the front man, as the speaker, letting everybody know. We didn't have a structure that would make the charity sustainable. And one of the key features, of course, which is very unique to Hands Across the Water, and I hope that everyone has heard of by now, is that 100% of donations go to the children. And this is incredibly appealing to our donors, to see that connection, that immediate connection with where our funding is going. But as we said, it wasn't easily sustainable to keep that happening as the charity grew. So could you just take us through, either of you, explain to us the formula and the formation of Hands Group and how this works to maintain the integrity of those 100% donations going to the children?
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess it was just to go back to the history, was that when I started Hands, I was still working full-time in the police, so I had a full-time job, and the way I started fundraising was that I started speaking at conferences. And when I had the conversation with Jill, and we both committed to start Hands, I was in a pretty low point in my life, and on a whole lot of levels. I'd just come back from my last tour of Thailand, and personally I was struggling, and I certainly wasn't in a financial position to do something and put all my energy into this, and I didn't have money to support Hands. But I'd been invited to speak at a conference in between tours, and they spoke to me about this whole conference circuit, and I thought it was all rubbish, and I just dismissed the whole idea. Then when I met the kids, I thought, well, hang on, if half of that is true, that can be how we can raise the money. So for the first number of years, the speaking fees went to fund the initial startup of Hands, and that was the way it continued until I left the police. And then the speaking fees, that became my source of income, and work had certainly started with Hands, and by then we'd done the first ride, and so Hands was generating donations as a normal charity would through the different activities. And it became clear, as you said, Bridge, that this 100 cents in the dollar was important to people. And I've got to say that that's not, it shouldn't be, is that's what charity should be aspiring to. And I've never advocated that. It's just our model, and I'm not saying it's the best, but it's worked for us. It's been sustainable for us. And part of the reason it's been sustainable is because of the establishment of Hands Group. So in 2011, we went, and the problem was, you talk about these dinners and events and so forth, and I'd have to come to you and say, Bridge, can you buy a table for this event 7 months out so I can get some money that we can use to pay, because we wouldn't use donors' money. We wouldn't underwrite any of the events. So I went, well, I need you to buy your ticket to this dinner that we'll have in 6 months so I can pay a deposit. And we realised that was certainly going to be limiting. And there was also the foresight that there'd be a point in time where we would need to employ people within Australia, and we couldn't do that through charity funds. So the social enterprise, which is now certainly known as Hands Group, was established, and for a number of years we just went around generating income that would come into that, and that's certainly where things are at now. And I think it's probably, would this be our 4th year now with Hands Group? I think this might be our 4th year that couldn't. I think
3 or 4.
Yeah, I certainly think it's 4. I thought it was even could have been longer, but when we brought in the team, and you know, it's not easy to have the social enterprise raise the funds that it does, along with the charity. But this year it was tracking to do so well because of leadership and the different programs, and you know, COVID has shut all that down, and it's just going to have such a big impact for such a long time, because of the tail that we will experience, and because we, you know, our whole essence has been about creating strong communities. And in their communities, like on the virtual ride, their communities in New Zealand and in Australia and Thailand, and we've existed because we provide value to people. They come to Future of Leadership, they come on the ride, they go on a trek. And so there's always been a value exchange, not just a reliance on donations. And the biggest challenge we face is all of those options have been taken away right now.
Absolutely. And Claire, this is the organisation that you now run. And I think we were having a bit of a chat about this in terms of the key programs that you have in place during COVID to keep the group profitable and sort of supporting, or not profitable, just supporting the charity. Can you tell us a little bit about, say, Future of Leadership? Because that's a key program, I know, that keeps the Hands Group running and obviously supporting the charity.
Yeah, so Future of Leadership would generate anywhere from 60 to 70% of our annual revenue into Hands Group. And so that, you know, goes a long way to support the team of 6 that we've got that are keeping all the wheels turning. And, you know, with government restrictions, with mass gatherings cancelled, we've had to remove all of that from the calendar this year. So, you know, that's a good $500,000 that is not there. And so what we're looking at, what the team's looking at the moment is, well, how do we take that into a virtual environment, but not just lifting your normal conference and plopping that into a virtual environment, because there are so many people doing that, and it's such a and it's, you know, that's driven out of not knowing what to do, and you know, people are just, businesses are looking at their events and going, well, how do we take this virtual? Let's just do what we've done before, but we'll just put some cameras and put it on Zoom and happy days. But we've learnt, particularly over the last couple of months, with the research we're doing into events, with the virtual challenge even, you know, we've learnt that people's viewing of events and experiences are so much different online to what they were in person. So we are looking at just different ways of running that this year as an event, but also we've converted the Future of Leadership to a membership offering. And that's an online program. It's a 12-month program. And that is an extension of what we have built over the last 7 years with the Future of Leadership brand. So it's, you know, masterclass, it's webinars, it's educational content that you don't just attend a one-day event anymore. You can actually get it all year round. So COVID's actually delivered some great
innovative thinking. Well, I'm just going to break out. I am going to break out for a little infomercial, because as I mentioned at the start of this interview, as I mentioned, that the caliber of the speakers that we have seen on this ride, many have come through your connections, you know, through the Future of Leadership program and through your speaking, etc. And I cannot imagine that you could sit through and listen to these interviews and not be unbelievably inspired by what you have seen and what you have heard. And so many of us, or some of us, you know, have lost jobs and are redundant, but others, But, you know, there are other people who are actually still employed and still in a position, you know, to help. And if you are in a position to look at this Future of Leadership subscription, I've signed up, and I cannot recommend it, you know, strongly enough. This is one thing that you can do that is really going to help the survival of the Hands group while they work out what other things we can do, like the virtual ride and the events that we've had on. I've been, because my career's been, you know, global for many years, and that's, you know, I know we're all sort of trying to get used to doing things on webinar and that, but you know, that's the way it's going to go. And I think we can get just as much value out of that, if not more, by being able to sign up for this program. So if you are in a position to consider this, and if you are, many of you on the bike are in leadership positions, this is the best way for you to develop your personal leadership skills by signing up for the Future of Leadership subscription. And that is the end of my infomercial, but I cannot recommend it. I can't recommend it, you know, enough. It's just, you know, spectacular what you've done. Many of you have swung into action now with COVID. What else could we do? What else can we be doing to help the Hands group and connecting with the children?
You know, I think there's one of the big things is to be an advocate, and so one of the things with the virtual ride is we had a lot of people sign up, and then we said, you know, we can actually double the benefit by someone inviting, like the riders, inviting one person, and when we talk about the double the benefit. And this is one of the things I love so much about what the team and what we all create within Hands is there is such a real value exchange. And, you know, we've passed over 90,000 kilometres that have been ridden. You know, we've got people who have ridden 800 kilometres plus more over the month of June. And I look at we've got a group doing Good Rewards Ride out of Melbourne, and I'm on their WhatsApp group, and I see what this ride has done for that community. I see what it did for Willie Molden and his daughter Amy, who shared this ride together. And I think the thing that we can see, we can double the benefit if everyone who's involved brings one person. And whether that's into the membership series, whether it's even just advocating our work, is I think you know, we've existed and will exist for a long time on the back of people who take value, and we have such a high retention rate because of the value that flows both ways. And the more people that are exposed to that, will the benefit for us.
Just while we're talking about the, you know, the sponsorship programs and the different things that we can do, can you just cover off one question that I think new people to Hands might have to deal with? You know, there's so much going on in Australia. There's been droughts, there's been bushfires, there's a pandemic, and people are giving, I know people give what they can give. But there will be a bit of a question in some people's mind. How can I justify donating to a cause in Thailand when there are so many desperate needs in Australia? How do you kind of respond to that?
Yeah, I think it's something that I've always been faced with for 15 years. And, you know, I think there's a few things that working in Thailand doesn't mean that there's work to be done here in Australia. And, but this is what I've chosen to do in Thailand. I pay a lot of tax here in Australia, and Australia is a country that has a lot of wealth, and there is a lot of support for those in need. A lot of the social problems that we face within this country is not because of a lack of funding, not because of lack of access to services and healthcare and so forth. And this is just my mission, and it doesn't have to be for anyone else. It doesn't mean that it's more important. It doesn't mean that it's more important than problems in Australia. And I've heard that people say, oh, well, charity starts at home, or I don't support foreign charities. And normally that's code for I don't support charity, I don't give money to anyone. You know? And when people put that argument up, I say, okay, well, name me 3 kids in the suburb next door to you who you're assisting or need your help. You know, we're a global community now, and I think the other point, Bridge, was with the bushfires this year. Where we are today, right here physically, is our farm was threatened on 3 sides by the bushfires, and we had to make, Claire and I had to make a very tough call around protecting our property. And for the first time since 2009, I had to forego going to Thailand, and CT went off and led the team, and I stayed here to look after our property. And we had a ride coming up with the Digital Live crew, and they had to raise $250,000 by March, and they'd raised 100,000, and I did a message out to them going, look, we're in desperate times here. The east coast of Australia is on fire. There's people in real desperate need. They're going to need your support. And I actually don't know how you go out and ask, but the message I shared was that the needs in Thailand haven't changed because of the fires in Australia. And what I saw was that group had raised 100. Their goal was to raise 250, and they raised 470,000 within a matter of weeks. And what it told me was that if we adopt a mindset of abundance, we will be okay. And rather than this one of scarcity. And in a really funny point, the challenge we're facing now is not because people are feeling they can't support us. It's not because people are going, I've given to the bushfires early this year, therefore my family or my business budget is gone. That's not what we're seeing, and certainly not what I think is the issue before us. The issue before us is just simply we can't get people to Thailand. But so that whole question of why Thailand, I go, well, this is where I started, and this is the difference that we can make, and we can make a massive difference with the, we've raised over $25 million since this started. The change that we've been able to bring about, the impact on the lives of the children, which is the most important thing, with the university kids and graduates that we've got, and how that will impact when they have children. That's a change that we couldn't bring about for the same spend in Australia. So I'm really comfortable, and if someone's uncomfortable, well, perhaps hands isn't for them.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I love that thinking. We're coming to the end of the ride. Yay. Look, no one likes to predict the future, especially in these current weird times. But, what is on your dream list for hands? And when you get to your ripe old age, which for you, Pete, isn't very long, and you look back on your work, what's going to make you smile and think, yeah, I just did everything I possibly could have done?
Right now it's opening the borders, and I'd just be happy even if we just knew when we can get people back to Thailand. And that's certainly the thing that's worrying me at the moment. And as we see COVID cases rise again in Melbourne, it's going to make people more nervous about opening those international borders. And as I said at the beginning, it's the tail that we'll have, because it's not like if they open the borders in March of 2021 or June of 2021, that we can then ride the weeks after, because then we've got to sell an international campaign to our community, and there will be reluctance around travel. There will be time for people to feel, I'm assuming that it's right to go again. So that's, right now, my goal is just to get the borders open.
Claire, your thoughts?
Look, I like everyone, I wish that 2020 could have played out the way we all planned it to, because we had an amazing plan. And, I'm just hopeful that we can get back to that place. And, we're certainly not out of the woods and won't be for some time. But, we're heading towards that and just doing all that we can. But I think, you know, one of the biggest projects that we've worked on, and particularly over the last 6 months, we've been working on an academy model over in Thailand to help provide our kids with an extra level of education, and which would then lead on to employment. And so for us, and I think it's a dream of the board, is to be able to see all of our kids, you know, have those opportunities to step into that education, the employment, and live that life of choice. So that's still the dream. It's still very much, you know, there are conversations that continue to happen around that, but we need to do a lot of work back here to look at these kids seriously.
And look, we've got the kids up. Isn't that wonderful? We've rolled into the next video a little bit. So for those of you that can't make the 12 o'clock, you're getting an added bonus while we wrap up here of seeing these beautiful children welcoming us into their home. Do you have any, either of you, do you have any last messages for our riders today?
Oh, for me, it's thanks. You know, thanks to those old rusted-on supporters of the Barnacles, and that's you, Bridge. And,
thanks,
you, and you know, thanks to all of those who, and it might be the case that they drop in and out, and you know, but there's people who, as you say, have been there since the beginning, and but equally to those who are joining us at Hands for the first time, well, thank you, and I hope that the experience has been something you go, you know, these guys do it okay, making some real difference, and thanks for being part of the Ride to Provide virtual challenge.
Anything to add, Claire?
Yeah, look, I would just say congratulations to everyone who has either finished or even just jumped on the bike, because it's a huge effort. And I've loved watching the community, and, you know, we worried going into it thinking, how is this virtual challenge going to replicate what we do in Thailand? But I think it has, and we've got, you know, 250 riders that joined us on this journey, and the banter and the support in the Facebook group, those that jump on the Zooms each day, the comments that we get from everybody, it's just a demonstration of how strong this community is, and that in itself is enough to keep us going, because we know that we've got the support of so many. And so yes, I say thank you to all of the community.
I never thought I'd say this, but I am sorry it's come to an end, because we've just loved. I've got more out of this than you know, and I'm sure everyone who's riding this morning has as well. So Pete and Claire, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing a personal side of your story, and thank you for everything that you do to keep, you know, Hands alive and thriving. We've heard about tenacity and grit through all of the speakers throughout the month, and you guys have it in truckloads. Thank you for everything you do for the children and the communities of Thailand, and you are both an inspiration to us all, you know, to get off the couch and do more.
Thanks, Bridge.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and thanks everybody. We are there. Yay!
We are there. So we'll officially wrap up with them not being here.
Over to you, CT.
Over to me. So that is it for today. That is it for June. So amazing. Please jump on and log your Ks so that we can keep that 90,000 going higher. And last chance to call out for donations today, especially within the financial year. Great.
And get onto Future of Leadership today. There's $100 off special.
Absolutely.
If you sign up today.
Thank you, everyone. If you want
Thanks,
to
see,
everybody. We will be riding into BTN this afternoon. So at 12 o'clock, obviously we'll have the same footage, but we'll live cross to BTN. And then 6 o'clock tonight, we'll be coming back together for some drinks and a walk around, or a virtual walk around the home. So we'd love to see you there. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, guys. See you, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, guys.